Blessed love and peace in Rastafari. We thought we were done. We thought we were about to get some sleep. Oh no. We've got further important things to say. Do I sound like somewhat bitterly sarcastic? I'm not trying to, but seriously, oh, come on. Well, here's the very, and who am I targeting with that sarcasm? Well, here's the urgent thing to share. Venturing into the realm of politics and other phenomena that are not priority, but at the same time very influential, and thus like prompting this response just so that we don't have to think about it and we can concentrate on our priorities. So here it is. I was walking out the door earlier today, and I stop and I watch a butterfly, and I'm reminded of a title. It might have been the debut album or otherwise of Kinfolk. I'm not trying to call Kinfolk out. I'm not trying to like target Kinfolk or whatever, but it is beneficial to have some specificity about what I'm talking about, so that Kinfolk who are observing these conditions and the actions and whatever can recognize what the circumstances are and what's happening. So anyways, first of all, I was watching the butterfly. I'm reminded of the title for a track, and this was like a while ago, maybe 10 years ago, whatever. Like I said, might have been a debut joint or whatever, but it was a very provocative title, attention getter, and I guess it was a very popular selling album or whatever. And I don't know if they're albums these days, or if that's what it's called, or a release, or it's not a CD or a download or whatever. But anyways, the title is called "To Pimp a Butterfly." I think that was the gist of it. And I don't mean to be negative here, but I'm calling out the experience, because I think about that when I see the butterfly, because the butterfly is beautiful. The mathematics of the flight of a butterfly is amazing. It's like beyond science's whatever. Science can try to replicate it and do an algorithm of just some randomness according to what science knows, and maybe attaching some focal points of food here and there to have some semblance of imitation of butterfly mathematics. But science never knows the butterfly mathematics, much like science never knows many other mathematics, particularly because science doesn't want to know those mathematics. Love, God, and the things that exist beyond the senses and evidence. So, all that being said, and all that amazing, miraculous things being witnessed, at the same time, there is that actuality of pimping a butterfly. It's not a profound thing. It's a very paradoxical kind of proclamation. It's just a lot of young kinfolk like get a lot of hyped about discovering like hypocrisies and like those dualities of life. So this notion of the randomness of a butterfly, the beauty of a butterfly, and then how to pimp that, how to pimp a butterfly. That's such a nasty thought and ambition, or even suggestion. I didn't listen to the album. I don't have an interest of listening to the album. Love and peace to the kinfolk that do that. And I'm not going to say the kinfolk's name. Kinfolk already know who I'm talking about, who know. So it's not much of a secret. But at the same time, peace and blessings to the kinfolk. And I know the kinfolk is doing the best kinfolk can. That might seem like just the standard yin yang that people hear me say, but that's genuine. But at the same time, calling things out, just like I call things out on myself. My little rip, tali titi, and additionally, and me looking all kinds of whatever, call that out. So I mean, this is the nature of truth, and that's what we respond when the kinfolk ask me, like, who Jesus is to me. The response is, what is truth to you? Are you ready to talk about truth? Are you ready to be truthful? How truthful are you ready to be? What have you done in this life? Do you want to be forgiven? What do you want to be forgiven for? Because if you talk about relationship with Jesus and you proclaim Jesus as truth, let's talk about your relationship with truth. And if you're going to be preachy about it, let's talk about the truth about you before you even talk about me or anybody else. So that's me venting a little bit and getting that off my that thing. If I'm just going to be in this process of alleviating angst so that I can concentrate better. So I was in a, somewhat of an aside. Um, so again, back to the brethren. It's not a matter of just trying to take any kinfolk down. It's a matter of calling out the behavior, the actions, particularly when the actions are rather influential and celebrated and supported and touted. So to pimp a butterfly or how to pimp a butterfly, whatever else. Again, I did not watch. I can't speak knowledgeably about the content of the album, the lyrics. Haven't listened to any of the tracks that the Kinfolk has put out for however long the Kinfolk has been out, been in the game, probably over a decade at this point. Um, Very influential, big name, even at this moment because it's in the feed when I'm on the YouTube joint or whatever in the algorithm. So obviously the Kinfolk is being supported and celebrated and propped up and everything. But what I know from just what I've seen is how to pimp a butterfly. Why would you even want to? Why would you even promote that as a thought? And even if the basic premise is to admonish that, that's not it. Let's be honest about that. That's pimp talk if you say that. Oh, we're not talking about pimping a butterfly. We're talking about such a sad thing, state of affairs, and how that's the perceived inevitability, and how we do our best to get beyond that, even after that's our personal experience of our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, or whoever else. Yo, bullshit. We can articulate that in a better way. What that is a big sales pitch for pimps and gangsters and prostitutes and Johns, dick riders and otherwise, vulgar language, wanting of patience, but that's the actuality of what we're talking about. So we can talk about all the yin yang rationalizations, but that's what's being proclaimed in that title. So because of that, we're not listening to that because we've seen that game already. We know how that plays out, and we're doing our best and striving and strawing. That's what we're doing. We're struggling and trotting to do our best to provide for our sistren, our daughters, and our mothers. So we pay little attention, but meanwhile, we're seeing how those message providers are being propped up further by the system and being offered as the solution of the downtrodden, and because they got intelligence, they can put words together, they got some knowledge, they got charisma and all these other things. So they become the poster child of the downtrodden. Meanwhile, just continuing the same downtroddenness, particularly when we see the kinfolk getting involved in the political process and everything else. They're like, oh yeah, definitely not, definitely not. Like they've been bought out. They gone, and that's not hate. That's facts. When kinfolk are attaching themselves to the political machines, that's the PNP JLP type situation. So nah, that's easy at that point. Like one with the title, but then when we see like rock the vote or whatever, oh nah. So no hate, peace and blessings, yo. If you want to sit and reason, who am I against celebrities? But let's reason about positive, genuine solutions, long-term solutions beyond those joints. And no shade to the political parties or whatever else, but come on, let's be honest. Are you ready for truth? And who am I? I'm a piece of shit. I walk with God. I come from heaven just like everybody else does. But let's be honest. So anyways, it still has the effect. It still has the influence because when I look at the butterfly, and I have to be mindful of not getting too intoxicated. I got things to do. I'm a grown-ass man. I don't have all day to be just looking at a butterfly flying. So, just as we call out the nasty ambition of pimping a butterfly, let's look at the nasty self-indulgence of just admiring the butterfly. So that's part of the spectrum. So when I'm looking at the butterfly and thinking about that, I think about the title of the experience. And truth be told, also, like, I talk about this kinfolk, but the actuality is I don't listen to much hip hop at all at this point because, independent or otherwise, like a lot of cat folk, and this is cat folk. I've said this multiple times through the years. I stopped listening a long time ago, probably over 30 years ago, I started to stop listening. Even in the days of Biggie, I didn't listen to Tupac initially. After he's done Dirty, I listen and I appreciate many of the tracks for many different reasons. But even still, like I don't see the example. I don't see. No, I'm not gonna down Pac on this, but there is a positive message. But there's also a lot of um, indulgence and ignorance, a lot of earnest striving and honesty. But at the same time, the solutions is not there. Um, and sparking the person who does the revolution. Additionally, we can appreciate that notion, but at the same time, yeah, we need the actuality now today. We need the kinfolk who are doing that, not the um, sometime somewhere. Anyway, so I stopped listening a long time ago, so it's not attributable to any one kinfolk. It's the game itself. Now that being said, we still respect, we still support, we still have our nostalgia, we still have our biases and susceptibilities, um, particularly from our young days. We still recognize the legitimacy, the validity, and the relevance that kinfolk have um, in being a conduit of communication between generations. So to be able to speak with others through the guise of, and by guise I'm saying GUISE, through the guise of the shared references of music and songs and teachings from those songs, particularly amongst those who have substance. I can name some examples, but if I name examples, then I'm touting it. And even in these examples, it's not the epitome because still, the vast many of the examples are still very much attached and propping up the plantation. And what I don't know what's in me at this moment to just like be this like tenacious. Haha. However, I'm being kept up at past midnight. Um, like I'm not saying the gloves come off, but I'm just like, yo, these are the conditions. So, um, does anybody know what I'm talking about right now? For those that do, beauty. Um, so continuing on to Pimp a Butterfly. Um, it's a nasty ambition. It's a nasty proclamation. It's basically done to promote sales, to be provocative, to prompt people to listen to whatever the content is within the album itself. And again, this is over a decade ago. And then become part of the machine. The machine says, "Yo, this cat is marketable. Let's invest." And so the person is given the chariot and the bling bling, and additionally, and called number 2 or number 8 or number 57. You can figure out those whatever those mathematical veiled references are. Obviously, there's a reason why I said those, but how intentional am I? Anyway, if it's insignificant, you can do the mathematics. Point is, they're not number one, and there actually is no number one, and that's part of the game. Um, and meanwhile, it's guiding people also to be not number one, subservient to the Wizard of Oz or whatever else. And the kinfolk who are the proclaimed rebels and the talented leaders of the underbelly or whatever. It's a ploy just to keep things copacetic, just like Brother El Hajj Malik Al Shabazz talks about the state seal on the liquor bottle, and additionally, it's pacification. It's pacification with just almost there. So I'm not trying to call out kinfolk, and I'm not trying to be negative. What's the purpose for sharing all this at this moment? What's the positivity? Well, all right, I'm going to say the other part of this notion of pimping a butterfly, because in actuality, it's not that deep. It's very simple. Now I know. I remember why I'm sharing this. It's actually very simple. How do you pimp anything? You feed it. You pimp a butterfly. Learn what the butterfly eats, and then provide that. The butterfly naturally goes to that, and then once doing that, adjust the conditions about how it's given. There it is. Boom, pimped. That applies to all life on this earth. Humans, the hierarchies or whatever. Find out what they eat. And then it's like that. So congratulations, pimp. There you go. Guess what? You've been pimped too now. because that's the nature of the game. Now you're feeding off all the kinfolk who taught you the pimp game. And it becomes just, you figure out, whoa, wait a minute, it's not kinfolk who are doing this, haha. It's otherworldly. And ultimately, it's the own illusions and delusions within one's own self. And the only way out of it is to let that go, to let all the riches and all the trappings go from that. And that's what's tenacious, like the camel traveling through the eye of the needle. Bladat. All things that praise the Most High. So that's the essence of the pimp game. Find out whatever that being eats. Get it and share it. Here you go. First bite's free. You want some? You want further? Oh, okay. Here you go. Oh wait, well, hold on. Now you want some further? Oh no. How about this? I want you to do something for me now. Let's make this fair. Yeah, okay. Here's some more. But no, let's make this fair now. Pretty, pretty, beauty, beauty. Flight, flight. Wings, wings. Here's some fruit. Here's some fruit. There you go. Congratulations. So, all right, we've already said that, repeated it. There we go. Now, that being said, and as condescending and dismissive or even disrespectful as I may seem saying that, guess what? Here's the nasty thing. Another way of describing that is domestication. The methodology of domestication is confining a being to a space and feeding that being, and through different methods of training, whether it's breaking in a horse or otherwise, feeding and feeding, there's an intrinsic and inherent, lightweight and voluntarily, congeniality and pacificity that is established when one entity feeds another entity. Again, the loyalty of a dog, the docileness of a prisoner, even a political prisoner. There's a certain element of pacificity when that political prisoner accepts a meal. I know from experience, it's nasty, and that's being pimped. Oh, you angry? Oh, you got truth on your side. Oh, you want some food? You want some dinner? Okay, here you go. Pimp. What was that thing you were talking about? You so hardcore? You untouchable? Your integrity is impeccable? You want some lunch now? Pimp. Congratulations. That's world civilization and everybody in it. Pimp. Particularly in a republic, because nobody's number one in a republic. Everybody's giving that up. Pimp. Regardless of how big their thing is or how low their thing is. And the nasty thing about that, for those who are on the ego trip, is that it's necessary. It's necessary for people to be domesticated. It's necessary for a man to submit to the authority of a woman for procreation, for partnership marriage. And it's necessary for a woman to submit to the authority of a man. Procreation, partnership, marriage. It is legitimate to value a man based on his ability of encouraging a woman to submit to the authority of that man. Domestication. And it is legitimate to value a woman for the way she encourages and inspires a man to submit to the will or to the authority of that woman. Not to the will. Let's listen to this and let's be very careful about this. To the authority of the woman, because the difference between the authority of a man and the will of a man, the authority of a woman and the will of a woman, is that, particularly for a righteous man, the authority of a man is not himself. It's not what he says. It's not what he wants. It's not what he tells or demands. The authority of a righteous man is an authority beyond himself, is a purpose beyond himself. The authority of a righteous woman, the authority The authority of a righteous woman is an authority beyond herself, is a purpose beyond herself. So when a woman submits to the authority of a man, she is not submitting herself to the man himself. She is submitting herself to the authority of the man and the higher purpose that the man is serving. The nature of the authority of that man, of a righteous man, we can say God, we do say God, but it's also further proximate than just simply God. It is the principles, it's the purpose in life, the framework of the authority that guides that man. The woman is submitting to that authority. And the man, the nature of that authority, of how strong that authority is based upon how genuine the man is practicing the discipline and the precepts, the practice of those principles and that guidance. And same thing with the woman. When the man is submitting himself to the authority of the woman, he is submitting himself to the higher purpose, the greater purpose that the woman is serving. And the further righteous and disciplined and humble the woman is, the greater and stronger that authority is that the man is submitting himself to, and the greater room and nurturing and sustenance there is for the man to properly care for and attend the woman. And same thing with the woman. When the man is practicing a strong discipline that establishes his authority as strong, that provides further substance for the woman to live and support the man accordingly. Benevolent favor amongst neighbors, congenial relationships, support materially, sustenance from the earth, and additionally is garnered and cultivated and shared because of the man's discipline and strengthened relationship with a greater purpose and a greater authority beyond himself. So, and that's exactly very much different, very much. It's extremely different than submitting to the will of a man. The will of a man, do this, do that. Because I said so, because I want it. I did that for you. Let's make it fair. Let's make it even. Come on now. It's a contest of wills when that's the methodology. And it's always calculating, well, I did that for you 2 weeks ago. You should be able to do this for me. Oh, I paid for that, this. That's the wills. That's individualism. That's ego, competitiveness. Valuing each other. Well, my contribution is greater because I studied this all time. I put in work. You've been partying all the time. That's will. That's individualism. That's self. That's a finite gain. It's losing sense of the infinite. It's losing sense of the greater purpose beyond oneself and the greater authority beyond oneself. So anyways, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about domestication. And when we talk about valuing a man for how he is able to encourage, inspire a woman to submit to the authority of that man, and valuing a woman for the way in which she is able to encourage and inspire a man to submit to the authority of that woman. And for the predator, that can seem like pimp. Oh, look, she's getting him to do this. She's getting him to do that. He's getting her to do that. Yo, okay, I see you. I see what you're working with. I see what you got. Yo, he got game. He's doing things. Yo, okay, I mess with him. Yo, no, I mess with her. She's doing things. Look who she rolling with. Look who she got on her thing. Look what she got doing for him. Or look what she got him doing for her. That seems like pimp to the predator, because they just see the facade. They see the surface of the behavior, and count it as submission of one ego to another ego, and have very strong aversion towards recognizing that it's actually service to a greater purpose that both share. Because again, eventually, particularly when it's righteous and there's that genuine mutual rapport and respect, the authority of the man is the authority of the woman. The authority of the woman is the authority of the man. Blah, blah. So the point is that at some part of the process of teaching children and youth about life, how to work within not society. Let's let that go for a second. Let's just talk about family. Let's talk about village. Let's talk about clans. How to live within the clans. What our responsibilities are. Ubuntu, Wulun, and additionally, what are our responsibilities to each other? That is a process of conditioning. That is a process of programming. That is a process of domestication. And in that, there is legitimacy in the eventuality and the preparation of a woman submitting herself to the authority of a man, and for a man to eventually submit himself to the authority of a woman. And there's legitimate valuing of a man and a woman by those respects. So, somewhat of a full circle when we talk about pimping a butterfly. We don't advocate that still, because again, we're just sober and we know what that game is. We're talking about respect, plain and simple. And from that respect, purpose and commitment and mutuality. So, and that being said, there is the necessity, the eventuality of domestication, of a man submitting himself, quelling his ego, quelling his ambitions, quelling his personal sense of self, and prioritizing something greater than himself. Same thing with a woman, quelling her ego, quelling her wants, quelling all her requirements for comfort and everything else like that. Oh, but that's how she's raised. That's what she's accustomed to. Okay. And when the war goes down and everything blows up, is that still the standard? She deserves it because of what she's accustomed to. Yeah, but it's not around here. Everything's burned up. But that's what she deserves. Okay. So, and I'm not calling any one specifically out on. There are a number of traditions that talk about that. When in actually traditional Orthodox traditions that talk about the compatibility of class and finance and being able to provide it for a woman commensurate with what she's expected. There's legitimacy within that, but that is not the priority. Priority is the discipline. And when kinfolk get caught up in those valuations about how much money kinfolk have, am I just talking about myself? Am I just advocating for myself? I'm advocating for a way of being, and I endeavor, I strive to be in this way. This is what our teachings teach us as well. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Buddha says it's only when people endeavor the experience of marriage that people start talking and valuing and excessively establishing hierarchies about who's better than and worse than on the superficial things without looking at the basic, which is righteousness and wisdom, living in a healthy, disciplined way and sharing that with others. So it's not about the money, it's not about status, it's not even about credentials, education, it's not about job, it's not about income. Let me tell it, because I let all that go, generally speaking, legit. So again, it's just self-promotional. It's a way of being. It's not my thing. I didn't make it up. But I'm trying to make it up. How about that? Anyway, oh day, 1 a.m., 1 o'clock in the morning. Where are you gonna be? Body bonk. What else we got with this? What else we got to share? So, all this being said, domestication is necessary. Children, young girls, it is necessary and beneficial and prudent to train young girls to be submissive to the authority of a man. It is beneficial, prudent, and necessary to train young boys to be submissive to the authority of a woman. just for the simple purpose and the pragmatic purpose of being married with each other, because that's what's involved. So then the question becomes, if when people are able to recognize the legitimacy of what I just said, let me tell it. For those who disagree, let's reason about that. We can go further, but for those who recognize it, let's just work with that presumption. Then the question is, how do we do that? How do we train a girl to submit to the will of a man? How do we train a boy to submit to the will of a woman? Telling the stories of marriage before ourselves, of our ancestors, prophets, and sages. Doing the rituals, showing the example of other married couples. And then also preparing children and youth to participate in the rituals, dance, and in many of those dances, particularly when we get to the stage of rites of passage and further, again, like the quinceañera, like the debutante, like the prom, like the bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, and additionally, these are formal processes of making those arrangements, preparing a girl becoming a woman, to communicate that announcement of her availability for marriage in the community. And so that involves the dance, that involves the songs, that involves the dress, and there's purposefulness with that. Same thing with the brethren. That involves, we can talk about the different roles in the ceremonies, whether it's the drum, the music, the storytelling, providing the food, the women preparing the food, but the different roles of domestication are involved in these rituals. So, and that leads to the arrangements of marriage between the members of the community, and that's strengthened through participation within the rituals. So that experience of domestication, it's not just one individual person's will against another individual person's will. It is a collective genuine, responsible process. And the energy is dissipating now. We've done an extra half an hour time, extra time of half an hour. So that's the basic gist of it. On the hip hop tip, I can say, like, for a while, my hip hop repertoire, I listened. The first people I listened to, actually, to be honest, the first people I listened to was back in the '80s. I listened to Run DMC, and Too Short. Actually, how did I find out about Too Short? From the West Coast during the '80s. Yo, it wasn't. We had a mixtape. We got a mixtape with Too Short on it, and he was doing things. When we talk about pimping, and additionally, it's particularly the production. It was just funky, and he's coming with that intelligence, street experience, and otherwise before Eazy-E. So, anyways, that's the introduction to hip hop. I'm young at that point, not even 10 years old at that point, and so it's just a matter of like, yo, okay, learning from having a radio in my own room and having access to some of the music, and then finding the times of the day where the pirate radio shows are brought on, particularly from the campuses, and then being introduced to further music from the East Coast, learning about Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, the Jungle Brothers. Those are some of the prominent features. Even though like a lot of the party hip hop joint was like a little bit like soft or whatever, and that's not shade, but that's part of the experience. There's still appreciation for the conscientiousness, and so that's part of the '80s who I listened to. Then, like I said, towards the later part of the '80s, when I started becoming older, 14, 15 years old, I am further diligent in. I'm sleeping again. I'm thinking about my maps and my work and everything as I'm saying this. and that's off topic. So in the 90s, listening to party hip hop, it started to get further Afrocentric and appreciating that. But I remember Arrested Development, Tennessee. Somehow that became a radio hit. Um, so, anyways, it was Afrocentricity. Then at that time, gangster rap emerges, and like the whole Afrocentricity kind of got thrown out the window, and everybody was listening to the West Coast, that those beats and everything else. And but the message of that was very much unhealthy and not solution. So I would tell people in latter years about that experience, being at an HBCU and hearing the underground hip hop from around the country, and that's actually a sacred thing. But again, the vast majority of the content of what people are saying is not leadership. It's not solution. Even when kinfolk are representing the hood in beautiful ways. For myself, at that time, that's when Bone comes out. I'm living in the Cherokee land at Hampton University, and over hundreds of kilometers away, and here comes Bone. That's like around the country, and coming from Cleveland, nobody coming from Cleveland. They doing things. They on mainstream like that. So even when kinfolk are representing or making it big or whatever else, that's comparatively inconsequential. That's not the priority. The priority is, what are you teaching? What solutions are you teaching? What's your example? What are you saying about your example? And how can young people, the children, the youth, learn positively from your example and from what you're teaching? So we care less about the bling bling and everything else like that. Um, so that's what I'm on back some 30 years ago, over 30 years ago. The coup I was listening to, eventually even these kinfolk become somewhat less tolerable because talking about things that are still unhealthy, and even when talking about the problem and how much of a big thing that is, still um, not providing solutions, and so um, we get frustrated by that because we just see it just continually pervasive. Like, yo, you've been talking about the problem in all these different ways. What's your solution? Are you talking about village? How do you build a village? What's the infrastructure look like? How'd you get that started? You got that much money? You think we can do that too, or are we gonna have to find something other way to do it? That's what the conversation sounds like when we talk with hip hop kinfolk. Otherwise, if it's just a matter of like, oh, listen to these bars, yo, this was tight, man. Listen to this flow, yo, listen, peep out that alliteration. Look at that mnemonic device right there. See what we do right there, yo, yeah. That is that's the sugar. That's the topping. That's like the the icing when the cake hasn't even been baked yet. So uh, that's what we began to observe in the 90s, over 30 years ago, thereabouts. Now, again, like I said, that applies to Tupac too, even with the beautiful, charismatic speaking of the spiritual experience and the striving in the conversation with God. When we look at what the actual solutions are that are offered, it's just like, that's not it. So, when Tupac is, like I said, done dirty, and there is that martyr experience issue, then we just provide further ear, and I'm sure a lot of people do, and that may be accused of being bandwagon or whatever else. That's just the actuality of what we do. It was very difficult to. Uh, I'm sleeping now. Yeah, I'm sleeping. So, anyways, it's been a long time since we've been off hip hop. We could appreciate all the different elements of MCs, and additionally the intelligence, the poetic devices, the alliteration, and other um, uh, poetic devices. So we could appreciate all the different elements of the music and the content, except for what the kinfolk were actually talking about, the predatoriness, and additionally, it's like, no, we can't do that. So we're gonna have to find another solution. So what we did end up doing is going international and looking for in hip hop scenes around the world, and then having reasoning with kinfolk who are part of those scenes or who initiated those scenes. Um, so we've done that from around the world, and actually we have a roommate who kind of endeavored doing something similar to that a number of years ago too, which influences what I just described. Um, so we look at international hip hop just as a way of seeing the continuity, still respecting hip hop as an art form and the opportunity to voice disgruntledness and the ails of society, but not getting too enveloped in championing that because we also see the limitations and the deficiencies. So, all that being said, we include the joint in this list. Um, don't even know what I was talking about when I just said the joint in this list. I'm sleeping right now. So we started looking for international hip hop and finding it, and but eventually again there is that eventuality of um, dissatisfaction, unconvincedness about what brethren are actually doing beyond the hype. One kinfolk talked about clickbait, and additionally, so because of that, like whenever we hear about new kinfolk and celebrated kinfolk, it's like we'll see, and we have to give it time to see what actually transpires concerning that kinfolk. If people are still on it, or that kinfolk is now like doing a 9 to 5 someplace or otherwise, we just say we'll take back. And then when it becomes such um, a message of no, you got to check out this guy. No, you got to check out this guy. Show me something that you consider to be like the epitome of what this kinfolk teaches. And when that is still unconvincing, it's like, nah, we've already invested so much generally, and now we've invested a certain amount individually for this kinfolk. So now, with that being done, nah, this ain't it. Um, and so that's what we found within hip hop. So that whenever we call out someone who might be like a front runner or getting a lot of attention from the machinery at the moment, our criticism is leveled against the entire game. It's not just any particular individual or what any particular individual does. It's the game itself and how the kinfolk feed from it, and often pretend not to. We're not trying to call kinfolk out. We're not calling kinfolk liars or hypocrites, but we're just acknowledging the actuality so that we can do something better further about it. So we stopped listening to hip hop a while ago, generally speaking. Occasionally we would listen to people who are recommended, but still, again, it just further affirms some of the conclusions that we make beforehand. Um, and in listening to hip hop, like I said, even in listening to international hip hop for a while, we recognize a lot of the formulaic tendencies of it that we already knew of before, but now we see it on the international front. So that rather than just an authentic experience of the storytelling or whatever from the kinfolk, now it's a blending of the conditions of the streets and the codes of the streets and the principles within the crosswalks, and it just becomes like an amalgamated meaninglessness. And I'm sleeping still right now. So that's part of the hesitancy in listening to anybody, even just listening to anybody new, and how much we give ourselves of our minds to that something new when we anticipate it. Oh, that's just going to be another thing of this. So the criticisms that I'm articulating are applicable to the game and anybody who tries to like ascend through the game, because that's what we recognize as the challenge. So the kinfolk I mentioned in the track, or the title that I mentioned, is just one of many um, that there's experience of challenge with. So it's not just singling out any particular kinfolk. And those, one thing is that those that are ascend and are increasingly effective in the machinery, then there is an increasing tendency and onus to call that out just for what it is, without condemnation, um, so that people can recognize that and make healthy decisions accordingly. So that's what we endeavor to do. That's part of the rationale for what we share and how we share it. And the context concerning the butterfly experience that I mentioned just many minutes ago. So, sleep talking. I'm drifting into sleep whilst I am talking. Me scratching the head. This is part of the midnight joint and provides relief amidst the discomforts of whatever else, particularly for my eyes. Even though it seems like it has nothing to do with the eyes, it's just this is a soothing thing to help with the challenges of the eyes that enables me to continue speaking with my eyes closed, to share these things that are not a priority at this moment, but for some reason or another are leading me to be still here doing this. So, what else I got to share? Hip hop. Have I finished with that? So, eventually we got off hip hop basically at all, because even the most epitome groups that we still listen to at this moment, certain tracks particularly, it's just part of it's increasingly part of the machinery, and sharing less about what the actual solutions are, and so we have to be further mindful about how we invest ourselves in that respect. So that being said, I'm waking up from sleeping, but still have to like recalculate. I'm hearing like all the different suggestions about what I was just saying, and what I'm hearing is actually suggestions about what I've been studying recently. Russian civilization, this map over here of the middle centuries, and it's like it's such a haphazard communication. I don't mean to be condescending with that, but just articulating that so we can work on doing better. Um, that's affecting my concentration, so I'm being mindful of that. I was talking about the brethren, and like not condemning brethren, recognizing brethren are doing the best brethren can, sisterin too, and further articulating admonishment, not condemnation, but just the admonishment of the game itself, and how anybody who ascends up within the game is just a further practitioner of those admonishable acts and behavior. So part of our duty is just to inform kinfolk very matter-of-factly, as respectfully as possible, as humbly as possible, with as much respect. Is that repetition? But not to sugarcoat it too much, and just to be candid, so that kinfolk can know, yeah, I was tripping. I need to make amends for that from 2 centuries ago. Is it? Maybe. Do we accept the inheritance from 200 years ago? Then is it appropriate to accept the guilt of the atrocities from 200 years ago? Oh, okay. Peace and blessings. All thanks and praise. What else I got to say to be here? What else I got to say to be out of here? The birds are starting to sing now. Have we not slept? Oh, no, it's only 1 a.m. It's only 1 a.m. We've got plenty of time. Sarcasm is rife now. That's part of the fatigue. Sleeping whilst talking. And now sweating further. What else I got to say? Talk about hip hop. Talking about hip hop. So, all right, where we're going with this is that we found another solution. What that solution is not listening to hip hop as much as we do, and it's not hating, because we recognize the value of hip hop as an art form, and additionally, the experience and further. But the methodology of how the music is shared, and it goes for, to be honest, reggae. I mentioned this before in terms of the infrastructure, the tour methodology, and additionally, it's all like avenues and directions into the systemic down oppression. So even when the kinfolk are communicating a message that's counter to that, it's communicating a message that's counter to that, but then propping up the actuality of it. So it's frustrating because we know that, and we know cats know that too, and we know that cats are doing the best that cats can, and it's very difficult to do otherwise, and particularly in a long-term predominant way, meaning that's how the predominant way that somebody sustains oneself. It's very difficult. It requires cooperation and looking out for each other. it requires some humbleness in our purchases and everything else like that. So that's another spiel. I've given that before. So solution here: where do we get our music from? If we're not listening to hip hop, where do we get the truth from? Where do we get our healthy masculinity from? And additionally, drum. Basically, first of all, drum. Reconnect the drum with African brethren. That relationship, healing. Teach brethren how to make a drum. What we're doing right now, by the grace of the Most High. That's a solution. Weaning ourselves from the popular culture, weaning ourselves from the toxic culture, weaning ourselves from the intoxications. Um, this is rather impressive. How much I'm here like this. This affects the energy to do AM prayers. I'm not even thinking about PM prayers right now, which are part of our obligation. Where we are able to get to that level of like doing that tough, and that might seem like a little bit excessive, but that's part of what our repertoire is. So, anyways, what comes to mind now is football, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about music that's related, but we talk about weaning off the popular cut down culture. Just like with drugs, coca leaf is a plant. It's a healing medicinal plant. When it's reduced and extracted and processed in a certain way, then that's when it becomes cocaine. It's a different phenomena. It has a different nature and consequences. And in a similar way, our culture is cut down. When kinfolk who are sharing the culture, even when kinfolk have done research and have learned about what the traditional singing is, and additionally, and then are sharing that as an extra to regular registration. Uh, the culture is cut down, just like the coca leaf is cut down into crack. The culture is cut down into a poisonous, um, distracting temptation and discouragement, um, distancing a person from a knowledge of self and the love of self, and a discipline of self, and further guiding an individual in towards investment into um, just I guess pragmatics. I'm sleeping right now. Solution. So what we find is plain and simple. What we find is this: young people who are playing, young musicians who are playing the music of our ancestors. So playing traditional world music, with traditional instruments, live music. That's what we find a solution, because in that experience, kinfolk are sharing the stories, are telling the experience in the hood, and additionally, through the guise, through the medium of the traditional music. So it's not like a newscaster kind of thing at that point with the MC talking about what the people are experiencing, but it's a consistency, it's a constancy. Like, we're going through things, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about what our ancestors share with us, even when it's songs that are composed by kinfolk contemporarily, when it's gleaned and shared in the structure of the traditional music, the rhythms, and certain techniques of performance. That in and of itself is significant um, and healing. So the solution we find is traditional music, the drum, learning to make a drum, learning to make other instruments, playing those, learning the songs from those, and then identifying a song for a woman's own marriage, and identifying a song for a man's path within marriage. inviting the congruence witnessed by society, community, particularly two individuals specifically, and building. I am sleeping right now. So that's the solution we find. Traditional music from other cultures, learning the music ourselves as much as possible, creating the music ourselves as much as possible, utilizing instruments that are optimally organic. Living as village, living as home front, um, sharing the music directly, doing workshops with kinfolk, with schools and libraries, and teaching how to make the music rather than just going and performing the music. That's some of the solution. This is such a fantastic example to set before the kings and queens. What else to share at this moment? What else to share? I guess I'm going to sleep one way or the other. And there's a purpose to this beyond what I've articulated and beyond what I fathom, beyond anyone's intentionalities either. There's a reason why we keep going with this. I've basically I've talked about the issue about the hip hop thing. We found the solution, traditional music, dance too, for the Sistren particularly. People talk, we hear the Sistren testify. Part of the reason why Sistren love dance is because it provides Sistren with connection with ancestors, opportunity to express oneself, and a refuge, an escape from dealing with whatever's going on at that moment. So those are significant attributes of dance and the value of traditional dance. So that rather than just doing the hoochie coochie joints and getting popular and being viral with that, because it's a way of like presenting a woman's self and pronouncing her candidacy and readiness for marriage. And so it's not just a matter about being prudish and ignoring a young sister and not preparing her for that relationship with a husband, and saying, I can't do this, can't do that, can't do this. That's not the solution. So in the meanwhile, she finds a way of doing it with or without permission and sanction and otherwise. So the practice of traditional dance is providing the outlet where she's able to express herself, where she's able to announce her candidacy for marriage and be valued for that, but doing it in a way, sharing it in a way that is cohesive with the norms of the culture of the people, the society, the village, so that in doing it, she is continued to be respected and supported, because she's doing the traditional dance. She's doing the dance that our ancestors do for many generations. She's sharing a knowledge. She's encouraging a knowledge amongst kinfolk. Oh, that was just the blackout. That's the normal blackout. So, anyways, that's part of the value of traditional dance. And again, it's not a matter of her doing studies and have to be a brainiac. For some women, that's the thing. Other women aren't trying to think about things. And so, again, dance is that one way of being valued for such. Yeah, we're gonna. So we get off the pimp thing. We talk about domestication. We talk about submission to a higher authority, mutually, in both directions. Uh, well, the way Murphy's Law goes, whatever we're trying to think of at this moment, thinking that we've forgotten something, it appears later exactly where we left it. So it makes little sense just to keep rambling on right now and spend some further hours out, just because it's allowable. Um, and then, I won't say make a weekend from it, but determine what the other terms of visit and habitation are from this moment. Anything else? Let's go. Don't even have water right now. All thanks and praise to the Most High. Blessed love and peace and Rastafari.